year. At least 10% of marine litter is estimated to be made of fishing waste, which means that between 500,000 and 1 million tons of fishing gear are entering the ocean every year, endangering about 66% of marine mammals. We have to recognize that while the general population is responsible for a big part of marine pollution, sure, we have to make fishing companies responsible as well. Therefore, I call the members of the European Youth Parliament to rethink and rewrite this resolution, which in its because clauses fails to address a crucial part of global marine pollution that is responsible for this devastating status quo. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very heartfelt speech. You had me hooked from the start. We will now move on to Econ 3.
Honourable Board, esteemed guests, fellow delegates, I would like to congratulate PEC for the effort they put into this resolution. Nonetheless, I do have some important inquiries which I hope you will provide me an answer to. You keep mentioning plastic and how plastic has a huge impact on marine life, which yes, I must admit it does. However, have you considered the possibility of other harmful factors which pollute the oceans daily, such as fishing nets and equipment? A global data review showed that during the past 20 years, millions of sea turtles have been inadvertently snared by methods used in commercial fishing. How do you plan on stopping these actions from taking place, protecting the marine life not only from plastic, but from other harmful factors such as careless fishermen dumping their waste into the oceans? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Econ 3, on yet another amazingly timed opposition speech. So with that, we have and also I would like to make a special thank you for such a respectful and constructive attitude. So overall, very well done. Thank you very much. We will now move back to Pesh for a 1-minute response to, on the one hand, the question raised by Libe on raising more responsibilities on fisheries, and the point from Econ 3 on the other factors that pollute the oceans. Pesh, you are recognized. You have 1 minute.
Thank you for the amazing criticism. My name is Isaac, and for the first committee, I have to say that you said that fishing is a problem, and I agree, but you said it yourself. It's only 10% or 20%. It's not 80%, which is the plastic packaging in the rest of the world. So doing what we can in the European Union to prevent plastic getting out of waterways is very effective instead of just focusing on fishing. On the other hand, fishing is still very important, and we still have addressed ghost gear in the ocean in our resolution. For the second questions, I have to say that you say that other products besides plastic, such as ghost gear from the fishing, is also very harmful. And I say the same thing that I say to the first one. Fishing is very harmful, but it's not the main thing. It's the plastic packaging and plastic production in other ways that is harmful to the environment more than fishing is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was exactly 1 minute. I am definitely impressed by you guys' time management skills, and we will now open the floor for points in open debate. I already see a lot of the hands raised, 8 out of 10 to be exact. I am very excited to see this, and it is my pleasure to give the first opportunity to Cult.
Thank you for recognition. Before I say my point, I just quickly wanted to congratulate the committee on their enthusiasm and energy they put in the OC, because you can really feel it, and you have perfectly balanced the succession of scientific facts and the human approach. However, there is one tiny pending issue that I feel like you failed to address, which is the fishermen themselves, who I feel are really affected by this issue and will be even more by the measures that have been taken. How do you ensure compensation for those who are directly affected, and how do you help them deal with their main activity that is, well, dying as well as the oceans are? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cult, for bringing, for noticing that things so far have been perfectly balanced, as all things should be, and also for drawing the attention to the fishermen and their job security. And with that, I will now hand the floor to Itre, who will be followed by Sede. Itre, you are recognized.
Thank you for the recognition, and also thank you for the many funny puns that we are listening to. I would also like to address something human related, because I would like to first of all point out that in your resolution aim, you perfectly say, okay, how to tackle and stop pollution, and that you aim at protecting the marine life. However, as also stated in your committee question, you were supposed to answer the question about how and to ensure human well-being as well. And unfortunately, I cannot see a direct answer to that question, neither on the short term nor on the long term. So I would like to ask the proposing committee how they would like to enforce that, and why they haven't included that in their resolution aim. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexander from ITRE, for drawing our attention to the human scope and not just on the level of down where it's wetter, down where it's better. We will now, as promised, continue with Sede before moving on to the last point for this round of open debate, which will come from Reggie. However, first, Sede, you recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me. I would just like to build on the point made by my previous delegate, or my previous fellow delegate. My delegate doesn't make a lot of sense. I can't see anything from that connects with the massive paragraph in your topic piece on human health. And it says in one of your because clauses that humans ingest over 70,000 microplastics per year for seafood. But what about reversing that damage? And I think considering particularly it should be included in the aims that the EU has such massive competencies in terms of fisheries within the EU, that something can definitely be done to regulate this from the point of which areas are more microplastic laden with fish than others, like the map from the north versus the south of the sea, the Mediterranean versus the Atlantic. In all areas like that, you can find maps very easily of where the microplastics are most higher concentrated. So maybe to consider that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sade, for drawing attention to the distribution of areas in which microplastics concentrate. Econ 2, I would like to apologize for not seeing the DR before. We will try to keep an eye out on that in the future and hope that this goes more swimmingly from here on out. With that, however, we will go now to the last committee that will be recognized, and as promised, that will be Reggie. So Reggie, you are recognized.
Thank you for the floor. I'd like to bring your attention to the because clause that states that 75% of plastic leaks are due to a lack of efficient waste management and management structures. It would seem that efficient waste management and recycling would be the keys to solve the issue of your topic. However, in my opinion, your aim doesn't even mention it, and rather focuses mostly on individual level action, research, and ocean cleaning actions. I think this contributes to solving the problem, yet I also believe that these objectives are not incisive enough and are not addressing what seems to be the main problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Reggie, for drawing the attention to whether we have actually explored every venue to address this topic. So to summarize, we have a point from Cult about perfectly balanced and the role of fishermen. E-Trade 2 has raised the question of human well-being into all of this. Sede has made a point about the unequal distribution of areas where microplastics are present. And then last from Reggie asking if every different approach has actually been explored. We will now have a response of 1 minute from the proposing committee. Pesh, you are recognized.
Good afternoon. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Thank you for your recognition, Mr. Vice President. And I will try to address all of the points collectively that have been mentioned in this round of debate with a very useful analogy provided by our expert. If you have a sink that is overflowing, you do not bring out a mop to try and clear up the water, you turn off the tap. Clearly, In our aim statement, we have mentioned that we wish to drastically reduce the amount of plastics entering European waterways. I would like to address the points that were brought up through this statement. In regards to recycling, clearly, as we've mentioned in our aim statement, only 30% of plastics within the EU are being recycled, and we would like to really change waste management systems in order to drastically reduce the amount of plastics entering European waterways. We want to turn off that tap using recycling as a method. Additionally, approaching human well-being or the benefits of fishermen. We clearly mentioned humans ingest over 70,000 microplastics a year from seafood. Turning off that tap, drastically reducing the amount of plastics entering European waterways will directly impact human health and also benefit marine wildlife and support fishing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really wish that everybody stuck to their time limits as well as everybody has been doing this debate. So big shout out to all of you. And with that, we will now move on to the policy proposals. And we will begin that with an introduction to the operative section by the proposing committee. Do we have a member of the proposing committee that wishes to deliver these? I think we do. Pesh, you are recognized.
Dear Madam President, members of the board, officials, delegates and honourable guests. Our policy proposals ensure optimal critical action with both immediate and long-term effects in dealing with the extensive problem of plastic pollution in our oceans and waterways. They tackle the problem on an international, national, governmental and corporational level, right down to an institutional, regional and individual level. They halt the continuous flow from the open tap of plastic production, while also encouraging waterway cleanup efforts. They ensure transparency from corporations in regards to greenwashing and carbon footprint, while educating and schooling people and raising awareness about our ocean's most pressing problem. We have pinpointed the areas of greatest concern which unarguably need immediate drastic action and introduce solutions to effectively combat these problem areas. We have ensured big polluters cannot cheat or scam, hide or bribe, dart or swim their way out of taking accountability and responsibility in tackling this enormous problem of plastic pollution. We also recognise the fact that not every member state has sufficient waste management and recycling infrastructure, and our policy proposals provide support for these nations, as well as developing and improving the systems in countries with existing infrastructure. This problem of plastic pollution is gigantic and sometimes overwhelming. It is not only a problem which puts our marine ecosystems and wildlife at risk, it also has negative outcomes for humans and human health. We only know the tip of the iceberg of health implications ingesting microplastics might have. However, if we work together and use PESH Committee's policy proposals, we can overcome this crisis. It is everyone's responsibility to save our oceans and, in turn, save human health. Remember, the oceans cannot hurt without humans hurting too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pesh, for this extremely sophisticated introduction to the policy proposals. I'm not entirely sure if I've already used that one, but it doesn't matter because these fish puns are cracking me up. Now, with that behind me, I will gladly open the second round of the open debate. And I think we are going to start with a very monetary approach coming from the Committee on Monetary Affairs number 3, followed by the Committee on Monetary Affairs number 2. Econ 3, you are recognized.
Okay, thank you for your recognition. I would like to ask about clause number 12. Could you please clarify what kind of penalties you would like to use, if it's monetary penalties, fines, or some legal measures? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Short and sweet. Drawing attention to policy proposal number 12. As promised, we will now go to Econ 2.
Hello.
Actually, I'm very sorry. Econ 2, just before I said that, we got a direct response from the Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs. So we will quickly be with you again. But first, we will disturb the flow of the debate a little bit to go to Libe. Libe, you are recognized for your direct response.
Okay, thank you for recognition. Regarding the penalties, how do you know how to implement the penalties, considering that greenwashing and the reason that companies do greenwashing is because of a loophole in legislation that you have not covered in your resolution? How can you penalize something that's a loophole and that cannot be held legally accountable?
Thank you very much, Libe, for that drawing the question to the technicalities of what has just been mentioned about the penalties for greenwashing. And I am very happy to see that we have another direct response from the committee NV1. So we are going to have a chain of direct responses here, it seems, and I'm very excited to see that. NV1, you're recognized.
Thank you for your recognition. My point is regards the penalties. How do you ensure that these penalties will be enough to stop the companies from greenwashing? Because, for example, if it was financial penalty, it might be cheaper for them to just pay the penalty actually instead of just be truthful about their products. Thank you.
Thank you very much, NB1, for drawing your attention to the efficacy of these penalties. I am, as I said, really like the flow of the direct responses, but as it doesn't seem like another one is coming in, we will move back to Econ 2 as promised. Econ 2, you are recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. I do have a question for the proposing committee regarding the policy proposal number 2. You are asking for reducing the amount of plastic and energy packaging. However, we already know that the biggest amount of plastic waste comes from food and beverages, and most of all, hygiene compounds. Hygiene products contain a lot of compounds which are really corrosive and decomposing for plastic polymers. So I just would really like you to further explain how you would do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Econ 2, for drawing into question the efficacy of attacking the producing of plastic packaging and instead drawing the attention to other matters such as beverages. We will now go from 2 Econs to 1 NV, and specifically it will be NV number 2. NV2, you're recognized.
I'm sorry, the hand was not raised anymore as the point was already being tackled in the previous debate. My bad.
Thank you very much for clarifying, Enrico from NV2. That means that we will instead go on to the Committee on Culture and Education. Colt, you are recognized.
Thank you.
Sorry, it seems you're muted.
Thank you so much. I had a question concerning OC6. I think it's a great suggestion to implement quotas. However, I had a question, how would you do that logistically? Would you propose a push of the European Commission and the EU institution for unification of quotas between companies, or would you give a free hand completely to the member states who will decide what those quotas would be? Would you push for unification? And how about the cooperation and standardization of quotas between all corporations in the EU? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colt, for drawing attention to the logistics of quotas. I would very quickly like to remind you that we have policy proposals, not OCs, although especially for this debate, of course, it would be amazing if we did have OCs, but it is not to be. So instead, we will move on with another point from the third Econ committee. Econ 1, you are recognized.
Thank you for the recognition, Mr.
Very
Vice
sorry, Econ 1. If I am very aware that you have already started making your point. However, as we just got in a direct response slightly late, but we would still like to recognize that. Apologies for the interruption. We will move right back to you, but first take a direct response from Reggie. Reggie, you are recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. I would like to add to my co-delegate's point about Clause 6. Some companies may not even be able to abide by these quotas because the products they produce are either the cheapest option that are necessary for many lower income people because the plastics are the cheapest materials to produce out of the options for containers, and because of the fact that a lot of plastic is used to help people with disabilities who can't use alternatives for plastics. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you very much for once again drawing attention to the human perspective of this topic on fish. After all, it is very good to combine the two. That's why we like mermaids so much, I think. Seeing how we don't have any direct responses in the chat, and a very kind apology from the Committee on Regi to Econ 1, I think that we can now go back to Econ 1 to hear the point that they were going to make. Econ 1, you're recognized.
Again, thank you for the recognition. We are questioned by policy proposal number 12. Keeping in mind that the EU does not have judicial privileges over companies, and all it's capable of is suggesting measures to member states, how do you plan to find those companies or implement other forms of penalty? Thank you.
Thank you, Econ 1, for drawing the attention to the legal feasibility of policy proposal number 12. To summarize, we've had quite a lively debate with 3 direct responses and 4 questions relating to, in total, 3 policy proposals. About policy proposal number 2 for producing packaging and other polluting factors such as beverages, the logistical questions that come up with quotas, and the competencies to actually be able to enforce policy proposal 12. We had especially a lot of debate on these penalties with questions of whether or not they would be enough and if the quotas are possible in the first place. All in all, quite a lot to respond to. Let's see if Pesh is up to the task. I see a raised hand from Pesh, so I'm going to assume that is a yes. Pesh, you are recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me. Let me first start with point 12 and the direct response of that. The loophole, if you look at policy proposal 5, that gives us transparency, which makes the loophole non-existent, basically. And we, for policy proposal 12, we mean to use taxes and other monetary means. Then for packaging, there are already some single-use directives active in the EU, and the fines on them are also in in policy proposal somewhere. Sorry. The direct response from Regi, the direct response from Regi, the alternative, we support alternative plastic, but as you said, sometimes it's not possible or something, and that's why we say drastically reduce, because sometimes there is no other option, and we don't say abolish plastic. And indeed, the mental health of the people is just helped with less plastic, because less plastic means less plastic in fish, means more people not dying to horrible diseases. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pesh, for such a succinct answer to all the questions that were raised during the previous round of open debate. Before we move on to the next round, I would just very quickly like to address the committee Econ 2, which has now had 2 of its direct responses not recognized. The first time, this was a mistake on the board's part, for which we apologize. The second time, this was because the round of open debate had already had 4 points and 3 direct responses. To keep it manageable for the proposing committee to respond to everything, we decided not to recognize your direct response. However, do not worry, your contribution to this debate is much appreciated, and we are certain that with such an active committee, you will have a chance to get your direct response in before the end of the debate. Now, with that said, we will move on to a point from the Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs before moving on to NV1. Libe, you are recognized.
Thank you for your recognition, and I just want to draw your attention to point 8. You say that you're going to allocate funds to DC Mayor, but this has historically been proven to be ineffective in monitoring plastic, as when they put their representatives on ships, they're easily bribed and or intimidated. So I was just wondering, or I raised the question, is this an efficient use of funds and measure for tackling this problem? Thank you.
Thank you, Libe, for bringing some historical perspective into this debate and shaking up the flow as such. I could not have been happier to see all these different perspectives being introduced. And with that, we will move on to NV1, after which we shall move to SEDE. NV1, you are recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. So I was just wondering, you talk a lot about larger corporations, but you never really mentioned the many small companies. Do you have any plan for how you will handle those? Will you have any penalties for them as well, or will they be, I guess you can say, let go? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annaby, for asking clarification on the role of small companies and the approach of the Committee on Fisheries. And with that, we will now move on, as promised, to the Subcommittee on Security and Defense, before going back to the Committee on Monetary Affairs 2, who have so actively been participating that we decided they can have yet another point. First, however, Sede, you are recognized.
Thank you for recognizing. The greenwashing problem has already been mentioned, and comically, the lack of policy proposal regarding the fishing industry shows that the committee has been directly affected by these companies' greenwashing policy as well. But my point was that Eurostat already submits annual reports on carbon footprints, and the European Union already voted in favor of banning the most common single-use plastics by 2021. So 3 of the proposals are either a repetition or inefficient. How is the committee planning to solve this issue without ever mentioning the fishing industry at all? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sede, for bringing in the broader scope of the fishing industry into this debate. Next up, as promised, we will go to the committee that is constantly a little bit too late with their direct responses. Haha, look at me suddenly shoving the responsibility to the chair. Econ 2, you are recognized.
Yeah, thanks for finally recognizing us. And I wanted to talk about the point number 10, especially the sub-point B, as it promotes volunteering, cleaning up the trash. And I think this risks putting a burden over the individuals rather than corporations and, the big firms that are responsible for this trash. I'm just afraid that it will cause people to think that they're guilty for this trash rather than the actual actors that are responsible for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very subtle jab at me. In Dutch, we would call that a stab underwater, which very nicely fits the Committee on PESH, but unfortunately doesn't translate super well. And also thank you very much for highlighting the structural element to this problem and trying to move away from the individual responsibility alone. Now, once again, we've had a very lively round of debate with fewer direct responses than last one, to be sure, but nonetheless, we have the historical perspective on policy proposal 8 with the delegate from Libe worrying that this might be ineffective. NV1 has raised the element of small companies. Sede has brought up the fishing industry as a whole, with Econ 2 doing the exact opposite, no, actually doing the same thing by asking you guys about the structural problems here and trying to move away from the individual, from the individual. Yeah, that's basically it. So with that said, Pesh, are you ready to respond to the points raised in the open debate? Yes, that is a hand up. And actually, I want to savor this moment because this is, I think, the first time the entire day that we have had all 11 hands of all 11 chairs of all 11 committees raised at the same time. So I think that a small silent applause is very much in order as we move to Pesh for the response to the open debate. Pesh, you're recognized.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys, for all the points that you've made. We are really thankful for you
for such a great interest in our topics. So I like to start from the beginning, from the first one. Liba, you said about money and the quotes. So in our topic, money and quotes and penalties that we provide, that we offer to implement, are about to make a great discipline for people, for each individual, for NGOs, for great companies. So this is exactly what is supposed to motivate people: money and quotes and the great responsibility which is put on their shoulders. The next point is about bigger companies, about smaller companies. We are about to make our main attention, to pay the main attention towards bigger companies, because they are exactly those companies which are the main polluters. So we'd like to start from them exactly. But of course, we want to raise the range of our influence and then start to influence on smaller companies as well. Volunteering for us is more about NGOs, is more about raising awareness. So yes, we want to raise awareness for each individual by educational campaigns, by providing great classes at schools, by making biological extra classes, and by working with volunteering organizations to teach each person how to work with plastic pollution and which externalities and consequences it has. So yeah, volunteering for now is more about NGOs, but we also want to spread this for each individual to get better results. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sabina from FESH. With that, we will open the last round of the open debate, and we will do so with a point first off from NV2. NV2, you are recognized. NV2, we're getting some feedback from your side. Could you maybe check if your microphone is working? It's better. Could you say something, please?
I think it should work now. Is it okay?
Yes, it is. Please continue.
Thank you for your recognition, and also I want to thank the whole community for this amazing resolution. But still, I believe that the policy was a direct solution for the fact that microplastics are far more difficult to extract from the not only from the oceans but as well as coastlines. So, and moreover, studies show that microbeads affect marine life as much as other waste. Thank you.
Thank you very much, NV2, for raising our awareness for the lack of an effective solution for the extraction of microplastics and microbeads. And after this point from NV2, we will move on to ITRE, followed by a point from Econ 3. ITRE, you are recognized.
Hello, thank you for recognition. Firstly, I would like to congratulate FESH for their resolution. However, I believe that the committee has overlooked one major source of plastic in water, namely fishing industry. Fellow delegate Isaac mentioned earlier that fishing industry accounts only for 10% of plastic pollution. And for clarification, it is only fishing gear, which accounts for 10%. Fishing industry as whole is estimated to be responsible for as much as 70% of microplastics. So my point is, without transforming the fishing industry, we won't solve the problem of plastic pollutions in seas and oceans. And from my point of view, your policy proposals do not include sufficient measures to address this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very technical point, drawing the attention to a difference between fishing gear and the fishing industry in general. I think it is only fitting that a delegate from the committee, ITRE, would point us to the distinction between these two. As promised, we will now move on to Econ 3 before we will finalize the open debate with one last point to be determined. Econ 3, you're recognized.
So drawing your attention once again to clause 12, I would advise you to be more specific and perhaps add a clause upon the matter of fishing, maybe a tax or even taking fishermen's license for a certain amount of time, depending on the weight of the problem, which also adds to the question of penalties that other delegates have expressed their opinion about.
Thank you very much for once again drawing our attention to clause number 12 and asking for a little bit more clarification. Now, as promised, we will have one last point during this round of open debate. And seeing how I have 10 raised hands, I think that I have a lot of choice. So everybody gets 10 seconds to most effectively impress me in a way that is catered to a Zoom camera. I already see some chairs swimming. I see a couple of people not caring at all. I see a couple of waves, especially on David's screen. It's very interesting. Okay, yeah, as Rebecca just pointed out in the board chat, we actually already decided. Econ 1, you're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. I would like to raise awareness of an issue that I find with policy proposal number 11 regarding the sustainability level or grades to products from 1 to 5. Wouldn't this incentivize companies to only invest in non-polluting packaging and not invest into actually making quality products? How can you ensure that companies keep making quality products whilst also updating their packaging to not be as polluting as it is right now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Econ 1, we really had a boatload of amazing contributions during this debate. We will now move back to PESH one last time for a round of the open debate, after which we will have a break for amendment discussion. PESH, is there somebody who is willing to respond to the last round of open debate? I will take that as a yes. PESH, you are recognized.
Thank you for recognition. First of all, I would like to talk about microplastics, as it has been mentioned a lot of times. Microplastics come from large plastic breaking down. So the first issue we have to manage is the large plastics and taking this large plastic in the industry and in the ocean, both. About collecting microplastic, there are researches already getting done about bacteria collecting those microplastics into the ocean, and those seem effective for the moment, but it is still researches, so we hope it's gonna develop within the next few years. About the use in beauty products, you have to know that the quotas that are on the industries and the companies also affect the fishing industry as well. So the use of microplastics in beauty products is regulated, as well as microplastic produced by the fishing industry. A lot of fishing regulations already exist, but the point of Econ 3 was very good, and we want to thank them for their really good solution. When it comes to the quality of products, this is a very good point, and we want to thank Econ 1 for this question as well. But we want to fund researches about this, and we hope that researches and innovation will provide sufficient solutions to be able to keep the quality of the products and change the plastic use as well. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It seems like Thanos had some technical issues, and I really don't have the same level of fish puns, so I hope you won't be too disappointed that no more coming from me. But right now, we're done with the open debate. Thank you, everyone, for your very constructive points. We will now have a 5-minute break for amendments. So, Pesh, you can go to your own committee room for maximum 5 minutes, while the rest of the delegates wait here and read through the resolution to make up your mind on the vote.
I don't see nearly enough people jamming to these amazing vibes. No, where did the music go?
It's coming back. Just a sec.
Feel sad to have to interrupt the music, but I'm afraid that I'm going to do so anyway. All right, and with that, it appears that there has been a request for an amendment. However, I will leave it up to the Committee on Fisheries to explain what has been changed and why. And as the Committee on Fisheries is explaining that, it will also be posted in the chat for everybody's clarity. So just one last comment. I want to basically thank you for everybody coming out of your shell and really rolling your muscles during this debate. And with that, without further ado, Pesh, are you ready for a summation speech? Yes, you are recognized. And please, in the summation speech, do also touch upon the amendment. Pesh, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the recognition. Dear President, dear members of the board, honorable guests, dear officials, and fellow delegates. First of all, let me just say that we are so glad for the passionate and sophisticated debate, and that we think the whole process went along swimmingly, and we are so glad for that. I think that it is vital that I start my speech with the amendment. I just want to say that we took to heart all the kind suggestions and all the great feedback that we got from the rest of the GA. So we wanted to announce that we decided to amend clause 8, which is about the fisheries, to add also promote geolocated nets and those made in biodegradable materials by establishing partnerships between fishing companies and innovation companies. In that way, we want to further touch upon the problem with fisheries and how it impacts our oceans, fishing gear, also known as ghost gear, and also how we can help the people who work in fisheries in the maritime productions, so we can further solve this problem. I wanted to start my speech with some numbers, but I know that probably all of you find statistics boring or difficult to understand, so I'll try to make it fun. There is approximately 51 trillion microplastic particles in the ocean, which is 500 times more than the stars in our galaxy. That is pretty crazy, if I might say so. And that will probably lead you to think that the solution to our problem is probably start to clean out our oceans, right? Well, that's what I thought in the beginning, but turns out it is not as easy as that sounds. As our expert said to us in our committee, we have to focus on turning off the tap, meaning we have to stop the production of single-use plastic products and unrecyclable products. Corporations such as Coca-Cola and Nestlé are on the top 10 contributors of plastic pollution without being responsible for the recycling process and how the waste management of their products. And the results of this irresponsibility are visible to the marine ecosystem and, of course, our own health. I'm gonna be honest with you, delegates. We don't have much time left. By 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. So if we want our legacy to be plastic, if we don't want our legacy to be plastic in the beaches and in the oceans, we have to act right now. We are not here just as delegates, but as citizens of our countries, of Europe, and of course, our world. It is now our responsibility to hold our governments accountable and to manage their waste infrastructure properly and make sure that companies don't pretend to be sustainable for popularity points. I was going to end my speech with the inspirational quote,
Please
but
conclude.
I thought, yes, of course. I just want to thank our committee for the hard work, and I really hope that everyone takes a small piece of our work with them to try to make a change in their own world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pesh, for that very passionate defense speech, summation speech, I should say. And with that, we will now move on to the vote on the political position and the aims of the committee, which should now be open in your chat. So please, everybody, submit your votes. I can see that they are slowly coming back. Coming in, yes, very good. I heard a lot of strong arguments from the opposition, but also strong defenses from PES. So I think that the net outcome of this debate was very interesting. While we are waiting, allow me to just give you one general piece of advice, which is that live every day to the fullest. I would really recommend you to carpe diem. All right, I see that we almost have everybody in. I will just give you 5 more seconds. And yes, that should be it. So I hope that everybody has had a chance to vote. And as everybody can see, with 52 votes in favor and 9 votes against, 1 abstention, the aims and the direction of PES has overwhelmingly been adopted by the General Assembly, meaning that we will now vote on the policy proposals for the Committee on Fisheries. So a new poll will be posted in the chat immediately, and as soon as it is there, please feel free to quickly submit your votes, as we are already a little bit over time. It's probably because I kept making all those puns. Oops. Yes, so the poll is open. Please submit your vote swimmingly, and then we can move forward. All right, I see that it's going really fast right now, which is very good. I really wish that it went a bit faster, but I guess you can't always have everything you hope for. I see Ricarda shaking her head. Oh boy, am I happy I'm not hearing her right now. All right, and with that, I see that we have 64 completions, which is the same as we had before. So I will hereby say that voting is over. And that means that I'm able to open the results and very happily announce to you that with 51 votes in favor, 12 against, and 1 abstention, the motion for a resolution for the Committee on Fisheries has overwhelmingly passed. Congratulations. And to celebrate, we will now have a very small address, I suppose you could call it, from the chair of the Committee on Fisheries. Sander, if you could just unmute yourself, it would make it easier to spotlight you. Sander, can you hear us? No, yes? If you unmute yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm good. Okay.
Right.
Yay, go Fishies.
Thank you so much for that confetti cannon. Don't worry, everybody, it's paper, not plastic. We won't pollute the sea at all. See what I did there? And with that, I think that it is high time that somebody take the mic away from me, because I will keep making these puns if nobody stops me. So I think that everybody can take 5 minutes, and then we will start the next debate at 3:40. Does that sound good? I think so. And with that, school's out. All right, everybody, please get ready because we are about to start the next debate.
Hello, so I am taking back the floor. No puns guaranteed in this next debate, but it's mostly because I'm not very good at puns. So we hope that was a good energizer though after lunch. So the next debate that we have is from Econ 1. So before we begin, let's all just stretch and then on the sides. And so we can begin. Benjamina, can you go on the... Perfect, thank you so much. So motion for a resolution by the Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs, Econ 1, Inequalities and Climate Change. In light of increasing inequalities, the intensifying climate crisis, and many questioning current economic models, what role can alternative economic approaches play, and how can they be implemented on a larger scale? So we begin with a context piece. Benjamina, can you go to the next one, please, to show the video?
Sorry, you couldn't hear?
No, it's possible that my Teams is lagging a bit. There you go.
Okay.
Can you start the video again, please?
Yes.
In today's growth-oriented world, the eradication of poverty is tightly linked to continuous growth and gross domestic product. Maintaining the current system of growth without leaving detrimental effects on the planet will be impossible by the time everyone has been lifted out of poverty. The ecological state of the world and the environmental impact of growth force us to explore new economic approaches and move towards a more sustainable lifestyle.
Adopting the current economic model to be more socially and environmentally sustainable, as well as to refocus on improving social welfare as opposed to GDP growth, which is gross domestic product. This is to be achieved with the involvement of both the private and public sectors at state and EU level, whilst cooperating with neighboring and global countries. Since economics is so complicated, we had so many arguments on whether or not a particular economic model is efficient enough or working well in a long-term perspective, and we've had all these arguments. But it's so amazing then, after the team building that we did with the committee, we just started talking on the same way, everyone understanding each other. We're just continuing each other's words and just improving each other's ideas. There are many ideas that are very controversial, such as UBI or whether or not we should continue following growth-driven economical systems. Since none of us was experienced with a type of resolution, we're kind of lost, and we're just all together helping each other to fight this.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this context piece. So we will now kick off the debate for the General Assembly with a proposition speech from the proposing committee. Econ 1, you're recognized.
Thank you for your recognition. Dear fellow delegates, officials and distinguished guests, the European Union states its fundamental values to be, amongst others, human dignity, human rights and equality. Yet in the EU today, over 20% of the population is at risk of poverty or social exclusion. A statistic shameful to our principled organisation founded to uplift the lives of Europeans. And so it is in this context that we on Committee Econ devised our aims to rectify the situation. Firstly, it is important to note that to move closer to our aspiration of equality within the EU, we see that first we must strive for equality of opportunity and equity wherever possible. All Europeans must be given the specific tools that they require to rise up out of poverty. But overall, if we wish for progress in any meaningful sense, there is one concept more pertinent to our goal than any other: sustainability. We quite literally cannot stress enough the importance of both social and environmental sustainability within our economies. Why? Because social sustainability means a resilient economy, an economy which does not collapse in the face of environmental or health crises, one in which the vulnerable are not sacrificed because the economic system of the state cannot cope. In the wake of poverty exacerbated by COVID-19 pandemic, the need for social sustainability is now more evident than it ever has been before. Furthermore, the fact of the matter is that our economies are utterly reliant upon environmental systems and resources, from water to oil to flood prevention. If we continue to exploit our environmental systems in favour of economic growth, soon the resources will be gone, our cities will be under the sea, and billions will be left in the extreme poverty that we have spent decades trying to eradicate. It is hence imperative that environmental sustainability becomes a key priority in every economic decision that we make, and member states must stop measuring the success of their country based purely on their rate of GDP growth. Just look at China, the nation with the second highest GDP in the world, and yet the world's worst air polluter and a perpetrator of severe human rights violations. Clearly, GDP growth does not indicate a high quality of life nor any form of sustainability. We must completely reevaluate our focus within our economies. But evident from the example of China, this is not exclusively an EU problem. It must be a global effort, and that is why we strive for global cooperation wherever possible. But indeed, before we achieve global cooperation, we must first ensure cooperation within the EU. Now, whilst the distinct economic identities of each member state makes it impossible for a single EU-wide economic system, there is one thing on which every EU member state must take a completely unified stance on: sustainability and sustainable economies. There is simply no room for compromise here. This cooperation must come from everywhere, whether we are simply a consumer, a CEO, President of the European Commission, or anyone in between. We must all collaborate on a large scale to make our economy sustainable for everyone at every level of society. So please, start today and do your part by supporting our resolution, so vital for the future of us all. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you so much for this perfectly timed speech and for highlighting how you integrated sustainability into your topic and how the topic of economy is very linked to social and environmental issues as well. So we will now move on to two opposition speeches. The first one will be delivered by Pesh and the second one by Reggie. So Pesh, you're recognized for the first opposition speech. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for the recognition. Dear President, members of the board, fellow delegates, and honorable guests, dealing with economy and sustainability is our greatest issue nowadays. Indeed, our current economic system has shown how harmful and unsustainable it is for both our environment and our societies who are seeking for equity.
Excuse me, Eva, I'm very, very sorry to interrupt you. Can you please try putting the microphone a little bit closer to your mouth and speaking a little bit louder so that everybody can hear your points more clearly?
Is it better?
A tiny bit more?
Is it?
Yes, I think it's more clear now. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay. So dealing with economy and sustainability is our greatest issue nowadays. Indeed, our current economic system has shown how harmful and unsustainable it is for both our environment and our society if we are seeking for equity and equality. It is thus necessary to put in place a new economic system promoting collaboration, involving and concerning each and every one of us. We must keep in mind, nevertheless, the inequalities we are currently facing at different scales, and we must take care of not replacing the problem in this transition. Experimentation will also be necessary in the research process, in order to provide a long-term solution benefiting to all, a solution that is not at the expense of well-being. I sincerely want to greet the complete solutions given and the members of Econ 1 for their interdisciplinary work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Committee Reggie, please forgive me. I misread the sheet, so you won't be recognized for an opposition speech. However, we'll hear from you in the first round of open debate. So for the second opposition speech, we're hearing from NV1. You're recognized.
Thank you for the floor. I first want to congratulate Econ 1 on what is clearly a very well-researched resolution. However, I do want to share my concerns that the committee have failed to consider the ongoing global health crisis in their proposed resolution. The pandemic has brought with it many problems: high unemployment, trade and travel restrictions, massive costs to the health sector, to name but a few. Even at national level, there is major disagreement in how best to approach revival. Some parties are urging for economic investment, others for social protection for those who are out of work, as well as calls for radical investment in the health sector. I wonder why the committee have chosen to highlight the lack of a global unified approach, when to me it doesn't even seem to exist at a national or European level. Even from my discussions with fellow delegates over the last few days, it's evident that every single member state has a different approach, and I'm worried that your proposal solution simply isn't attainable given the current global climate. I'd really appreciate any clarification that the committee could offer on this, because I understand it's a really difficult position. Thank you.
I apologize for the short lags. Thank you very much for your opposition speeches. Would the proposing committee like to respond? You have 1 minute to respond to these two opposition speeches on the aim of your resolution. You're recognized.
Socrates, you are muted.
Sorry, regarding the second opposition speech, the current pandemic gives us a very narrow path to change the economy. Now that we're going to go back to normal speeds and the people are going to go back to their lives, it's time for the new economy to start in the end of the pandemic. Different member states do have different opinions in which on how the economy should work, and we have stated that with cooperation with all nations and respecting their own decision, we can create an economy that is sustainable and respects its member states' economic formulas, either that's on public or private sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very concise response. We appreciate that. So we're now moving on to the first round of open debate that only focuses on the aim and the because clauses. And as promised, we'll begin by Reggie. Reggie, you're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. First of all, I'd like to thank the Econ 1 committee for sparing their time. The aims they're trying to pursue are very noble, but looking at the resolution, it seems as though the committee members have only focused on making the economic system more sustainable and thus have overlooked the hundreds of thousands of people who are already living under inhuman conditions. Unfortunately, I can see neither a clause for improving their living conditions nor a clause on trying to close the huge financial gap between European citizens. Additionally, in the aim, it was stated that alternative economic approaches were going to play a role in the resolution, but according to my humble knowledge, I can't see those mentioned alternative economic approaches in your resolution, so it would be much appreciated if I could get a clarification on those aspects regarding inequality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We'll follow with a point from Colt. You're recognized.
I would also like to thank the Econ 1 committee for their resolution. However, my point being made on the aim is that the committee mentions that they wish to adapt economic models to be more socially and environmentally sustainable, where a shift from gross domestic product growth to more social welfare should be made. But isn't the point of sustainable development to balance gross domestic product growth by using environmentally sustainable means? Although being environmentally sustainable is vital, I do not believe that the EU, an organization built to foster sustainable economic growth and development should hinder GDP growth for the sake of the environment, as the two should and must be integrated and dependent on each other.
Thank you very much. We will continue with a point from Econ 3. You're recognized. Excuse me, just before Econ 3, before you speak, Libe has a direct response. So Libe, you're recognized.
To build off what the last delegate from CULT said, in regards to gross domestic product, there is also an opportunity to further social sustainable development, which I feel was missed in the aims of this resolution. By counting labour such as unpaid domestic care, you can ensure that vulnerable groups are forced to be recognised by member states, and this opportunity was missed in the resolutions and also aims, as GDP isn't inherently a bad thing.
Thank you. So now we'll go to Econ 3, as promised. Econ 3, you're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. So Econ 1, your political statement states as an aim to provide opportunities and follow a path of decreasing poverty. However, there are no elements of evidence in your resolution directly addressing this topic and further contributing to tackle this issue of poverty. So how are you planning to achieve this aim?
Okay, thank you. And finally, just a reminder that anything that has to do with how you will achieve the aim, that'll be covered in the next 3 rounds of debates when we talk about the policy proposals. Here it's comments on what the aim is and what context was given. So we'll take the very last point on aims from the committee SEDE. You're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. It has already been mentioned in an opposition speech and in a point, but again, I have to sort of point out that as of right now, our economies are not in a good place due to COVID-19 and due to the measures we are going to be forced to take regarding climate change. So I'm just afraid that focusing on other things than GDP or getting our economies back in order could hurt them more than we can take. So whether you could elaborate on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this wraps up our first round of open debate on the aims of the resolution. There have been several points about how to incorporate these other elements, social elements. What was, if there was a missed opportunity in this case, to integrate more social aspects. And then there were several questions on whether now is really the time and what are potential risks of changing economic approaches. So it is now back to the proposing committee to clarify on their aim and respond to these several points of debate. Econ 1, you're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. I'd start by thanking you guys for the fellow delegates for giving us this criticism. And I'd start by saying that we did not only focus on sustainability, or at least we did, but in a way in which we did mention inequality, as well as the economic experimentation stuff that we need in order to tackle these inequality problems. We stated, and what will my fellow delegates will say afterwards during the debate on the propositions, that we need to experiment on UBI, and also we need to take care of inequality at a larger scale, also by collaborating with our European neighborhood, not only into our European Union area, but also as a worldwide effort. Also, there seems to have been a misunderstanding on how we have tackled the GDP and the economic indicators matter. We do not think that GDP is inherently bad. That cannot be the case. An indicator is not a bad thing, it's just numbers. Numbers cannot be good or bad. But our attitude towards numbers, that could be good or bad. If we only focus on growth without taking into account, as my fellow colleague Iona said earlier, we miss a lot from the bigger picture. Only seeing growth takes out of the picture all the harm, all the damages, environmental, social, and human, that is an only growth approach can bring to our economies. Of course, I do very much understand when the fellow delegate from SEDE says that our economies are not in a good place. That is something that needs to be acknowledged, but I would like to ask him, when you're trying to rebuild something, would you like to rebuild it in a way that the foundations are solid or not? Right now, we have an opportunity, one in a century opportunity to rebuild our economies in a sustainable way. Now that everything has been brought down by this economic crisis, we cannot rebuild on something
Please
that
conclude.
of course, I'm going to conclude with this phrase. We cannot rebuild on something that we know has caused harm to both our planets and its inhabitants. We should rebuild on something that looks more solid and sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this comprehensive reply to the questions on the aim. This wraps up the discussion on the aim of the resolution, and we now move on to the policy proposals, which begins by 2 minutes from the proposing committee explaining their policy proposals. Econ 1, you're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. Ms. President, respected members of the board, distinguished chairpersons, guests, and fellow delegates. During our 3 days of committee work, we have realized first and foremost that GDP growth is often not the most adequate indicator of the quality of life and social welfare. In our resolution, we thus recommend prioritizing the Human Development Index as well as the Gini Index as better indicators for the goals we wish to achieve. Furthermore, we recognize the importance of SMEs in achieving these goals and focus on showing that sustainability is not just beneficial, but also profitable. UBI also caught our attention considering that's an economic model that shows promise and potential, while strongly recommending studies to continue. In our resolution, we realize the responsibility that lies on member states. Therefore, ask them to commit to specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound long-term sustainability goals. Lastly, we request that the European Commission put sustainability at the forefront of its operations by prioritizing sustainable development projects in the ENP and revising international trade deals to ensure that they are aligned with sustainable development goals. We have recognized a responsibility of stakeholders at every level, and we believe that we have tackled this issue from as many angles as possible. Needless to say, we strongly believe in the effectiveness of our resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this greatly timed presentation of your propositions. And so we'll move on to the second round of open debates on the policy proposals. We'll begin with NV2, followed by PESH. NV2, you're recognized.
Thank you. As you actually mentioned in your, I would like to first start by saying that overall, these policies are very good, but I do think there's one thing that you've failed to take into account, and that is that there is a huge inequality between different European countries. In fact, this is actually something that you mention in your fact below the aim, and yet I don't feel that you take it into account when making your specific policies. So a perfect example of this is Policy 6. So considering sustainability as the primary criterion for selecting investments. And yet it is clear that richer European countries will have an easier time transitioning to a sustainable economic model and will therefore have an easier time getting these investments, despite the fact that poorer countries are the ones that need these investments more.
Thank you very much. We'll move on now to PESH. You're recognized. Actually, I'm sorry, I was too quick. Econ 1 has a direct response to this element. So Econ 1, we are recognizing you to talk about how you're addressing inequality between European countries, and in particular, how Clause 6 will relate to that. So Econ 1, you're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition, and the criticism that has just been made is pretty fair. But I think we're looking at two things that are not really directly related to each other, or as I explained better. Of course, countries who have transitioned or have started transition earlier than others will have an easier time getting those investments. But at the same time, we do not want countries who have not transitioned yet to get investments, which will mean that this transition comes later. So what I mean to say is that if we don't give the investments that now the European Investment Bank gives on unsustainable approaches to the economy, then these countries will be forced to look at sustainability in a better way. If they want to get those investments, they need to transition earlier. So more than a punishment, I would see this as something more like an incentive to less developed countries to make their transitions earlier. Thank you.
Thank you. And the debate is heated up. So now we are going to NV1 for direct response, and then we will see if Reggie can then confirm if you still have a point that is directly related to that. So first we'll go to Econ 1 for your direct response.
Thank you for the recognition. I would like to say that I actually disagree with my fellow delegate from Econ 1 who mentioned that it could be like an incentive. I see where you're coming from and I see your point, and I would like to commend you on like what you did with the resolution. I think it's pretty well written, but I think that it really will be extremely hard for less fortunate countries to transition because they have other bigger issues to worry about, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic striking. There are countries who cannot afford masks, who cannot afford some testing, who cannot afford vaccines at this point. And I feel like those countries would much rather put their money towards battling the current health crisis than battling against ending poverty. Of course, they will do that, but I think for now their main focus is going against the health crisis, whereas other richer countries, as my fellow delegate mentioned, would do it with way less problems because they have enough money for testing. They do have enough money for vaccines. They have enough money to put into fighting against poverty. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we really appreciate how everybody's very passionate in this debate. However, we'll ask you to try to keep your points a little bit more concise and also stick to 1 point per point. And so next we had a direct response from Reggie. Does it directly relate to the last point? So how investments should focus on COVID-19 response, and there are more short-term priorities. So then Reggie, you're recognized.
Yeah, just to add on to that point about that these countries have bigger and more pressing issues at hand. You also need to remember that with the COVID-19 pandemic, they need an immediate amount of income, and that income is probably coming from the successful sort of gas, oil, and coal industries that have been making money from people staying at home and requiring more electricity. And so the government that needs this money in now are actually profiting off the presence of these corporations, and they can't afford to be taking these away from themselves with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you so much. So next we have a direct response from Itre. You're recognized.
Thank you for recognition. I just wanted to point out the thing that said the delegates, my fellow delegates, that some governments, some states cannot allow themselves to put an effort to ending poverty or something when there is health crisis or anything. But I am just a bit concerned that it usually means that the state is stealing money, and usually they would have money to end the poverty, and it's still the mean not of not being able to, but more of not wanting to. So in this case, I agree more with the committee itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this contrasting view on this issue. And so the final direct response and the final point in this round of debate, Pesh, I'm sorry, you'll go in the next round, is going to go, well, I guess not final because we still got another direct response, but now we're going to move on to Econ 3 for a direct response.
All three delegates keep on talking about money and like governments not having enough money. However, I would like to remind everyone that the EU has unlimited funding, so money is not an issue in this case. So yeah.
Okay, so the last point on this debate will come from Security and Defense. You're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. I see that my fellow delegate has claimed that funding is unlimited. It's definitely not. The European Union is about to face a financial crisis from COVID-19. I can definitely see that, at least in the Czech Republic, my country, we are about to go crashing down, not only because of COVID, but bad politics here in general. But that's a debate for another time. I just have to say again that I don't believe we have the finances. I don't believe that we're doing good enough to be able to transition to anything. We need to try to save our people who just, there's people who can't afford medicine right now, who can't afford basic needs for their lives. I think that should be a priority, apart from, of course, sustainability regarding climate change, which we need to tackle immediately as well.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we're going to go back to the proposing committee. There have been many, many points, a lot of direct responses. There seems to be a lot of strong opinions about the topic of what financing to prioritize and how to balance sustainability priorities along with short-term priorities like a health crisis. And then at which point does battling poverty, how does that fit into all of this? So we will now go back to the proposing committee to respond to all of these different points that started off from clause number 6. So Econ 1, you're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. So I would first like to address what my fellow delegate from MV1 suggested about the poorer states in Europe not having the infrastructure and funds to direct their investments into something sustainable. If we encourage those states to pursue sustainability through their needs and through their actual goals, they might be more incentivized to do so. They might actually devise projects that encompass all their needs that are rather basic compared to other European countries, but still in a sustainable way. So if we give, as a European Union, enough money to incentivize this, we can achieve a more sustainable and long-term European plan. Regarding what my fellow delegate from Regi said about the fact that some companies profit off the fact that the pandemic has increased a lot of the number of people staying at home using electricity, in Europe, especially in the poorer countries, there is not enough industry to pollute as much as in the richer countries. Most of the energy in Eastern European countries, the poorest, it comes from Russia, which is another polluter that is outside the EU, and we do not talk about that in this context. Going back to the point made by a fellow delegate from ITRE, saying that the states can or cannot steal from these funds, we can see in our policy proposal number 9 that we want to establish a task force that will ensure that every measure we take inside our policy proposal is as respected and is applied as we envision it. The last point made
Please
by
conclude.
Sure. We do not talk about money in UIP because we are told we have unlimited funds, and finances is a problem that each member state will have to discuss amongst themselves by using the new and sustainable economic model. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will now move on to the last 2 rounds of open debate. So seeing how many points were already addressed in the previous debate, we're going to take fewer points in these next 2 rounds. So we're going to begin round 3 with finally a point from Pesh. You're recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me. So I would like to bring attention to your policy proposal regarding the number 4, regarding the International European Sustainability Day. I'd like to ask for more clarification on how this would work, as we know we already have Earth Day, which is arguably one of the biggest sustainability visibility days, and we know that this isn't really working to bring awareness to people who aren't already involved in the sustainability action or field of life. So I'd like to ask how that's going to work. And
great, thank you so much. It's only 1 point per point, we're sorry. So next we're going to Econ 2, you're recognized. And we have a direct response, one of the few committees who haven't used it yet, and it's coming from the Committee on Culture and Education. You're recognized.
Yeah. So what's gonna happen? So what I want to cover about is that in point 2 of this entire
I'm sorry, is this related to point number 4 on the International European Sustainability Day?
Sorry, we have misunderstanding. We have a direct response and not a point, so we'll have a different delegate delivering.
Okay.
Sorry. Excuse me.
No worries. So the delegate from Cult with a direct response.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for the recognition. So yeah, in relation to your International European Day of Sustainability, a quick Google search, and as somebody who's been actively involved in it, the European Sustainable Development Week is in September. And this has already been promoting so many causes in regards to sustainability, as well as the SDGs being promoted in schools and workplaces. So I don't understand how, of course, we can all recognize that promoting and advertising is so important, but with other pressing issues, is this our main focus when there's already so much being done into advertising the sustainability across European member states?
Thank you. That was a very on-point direct response. So next we're moving to NV2 for direct response, still on this topic of an International Day for Sustainability in Europe.
I hope you guys can hear me, and thank you for recognition. And I also want to add up a little detail that I believe that such one day or 1 week events would have no positive impact on the problem. So maybe it would be better to use a different words to come up with a solution, or maybe fully eliminate, because as already other delegates have mentioned, it has less impact. And that's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So there has been many points already, and I see the direct response both from ITRE and SEDE, but they have already used their direct response during this debate. So we will not recognize you for this. Also, we've heard several contrasting points. So I suggest that the following points focus on other policy proposals. So we're going to recognize Econ 2 for the next point in this debate.
Thank you for recognizing. I'd firstly like to say that I really enjoyed the resolution by Econ 1, and I do agree that GDP shouldn't be the only determinant, but I have a slight issue with the idea that when giving loans, the sustainability of a firm should be the main priority. And I'm just worried that if this is the case, the most important thing of the efficiency of a firm won't be taken into hand. And thus, if inefficient firms are given loans, they won't be able to, in some cases, or in most cases, pay back their loans, meaning that this could actually lead to a lot of non-performing loans that will lead to a banking crisis in Europe, which we definitely can't have during the COVID crisis. Thank you.
Great, thank you for this concrete proposal on a specific aspect of integrating sustainability in these issues. And so for the final point on this third round of debate, we will recognize ITRE. You're recognized. We cannot hear you.
Yes, thank you for recognition. I would like to point out that in your policy proposals, you focus on green transition of small and medium enterprises, and you propose nothing in regard to big companies. And according to the Carbon Majors report, just 100 companies are responsible for 70% of global emissions. And let me assure you that these are not small or medium-sized enterprises. These are huge companies which drive climate crisis, and in your policy proposals, you fail to tackle this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So after this third round of open debate that was still on fire with direct responses, we're going back to the proposing committee. The points raised during this round of debate were about the European Day of Sustainability and how to effectively raise awareness versus what has already been done in this topic. Then there's the issue of when taking sustainability into account, how to still ensure economic performance and whether there are any risks related to that. And finally, what is being done to tackle unsustainable behavior by large companies. Econ 1, are you ready to respond to this third round? You're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. And thank you to my fellow delegates for the point they made. I wanted to start with the first point by PESH committee, and also I want to mingle in there the direct response by CULT committee. It is going to be regarding our OC number 4. It is going to be a holiday. Thank you for the research that you had made a CULT committee, but that day is private, so it is funded by a company, but we want that day to become a public national holiday. And regarding, I know that there is the Earth Day as a holiday, but as our topic goes, it is more widespread, and we want the sustainability holiday to be more widespread, not actually only involving the sustainability in the environment, but also involving the sustainability in economics and the social welfares, in the education and in the mindset of the citizens. So I think this would be something more efficient that our committee came up with. Regarding the second point of Econ 2, thank you for the thumbs up in the beginning. I think that banks pretty much know well where to give their money to. So there are specific management or risk of management groups that actually work with that. Plus, I invite you to have a look at our C number 9 that we have proposed a task force that actually will regulate and oversee everything goes in the right direction and everything is implemented in as great as possible. Regarding the last point of ITRE committee on the green transmission, I do agree that the risk comes from all levels. That's why we have separated and done different levels of stakeholder. But I think we can all agree at one point that innovation and sustainability comes from startup. Like, if it will be nice for big companies, and of course they will have restriction and taxes on their emissions that they have, but small companies and startups are easily to penetrate, and you can shape that the way they want, because if you implement in the mindset of a person sustainability since the first steps of a business, that will pretty much conduct his whole journey in his business administration.
Thank you very much for this comprehensive response, for addressing the awareness raising aspect, as well as why you decided to focus on small and medium enterprises. So we're now going into our very last round of open debates that will be led by Libe. You're recognized.
Okay, thank you for recognition. In regards to policy proposal number 2, first of all, the committee of Econ 1 has not taken into account the possibilities of shareholders investing in companies that have sustainable technology and eco-friendly technologies. It usually happens because European Union gives the possibilities and some benefits to the companies that are proven to be sustainable. Therefore, we do not see the use of the state and member states investing in such SMEs, especially because it will create unfair competition on the market. And when creating unfair competition means a lack of innovation and lack of competition on the market as a whole. And without that, you do not have economic sustainability. You do not have a growth in GDP. And even though we love social welfare, we do not see how you can have jobs. We do not see how you can have job opportunities or economic growth with that.
Thank you. And we have a direct response from Econ 2. Does it have to do with as well clause number 2, an investment into SMEs? Econ 2, you're recognized.
No, it doesn't have to do with that.
That was with the one before.
Sorry, I missed it. Well, you're not recognized for your direct response, unfortunately, but instead we'll recognize cult.
Yes, sorry for the confusion caused earlier. So what I want to cover is point number 2C especially, which will promote a sustainably focused SMEs, which are small to medium enterprises in transition to sustainable economic models, as they are often wrongly perceived as unprofitable to private investors. But something that I find a bit contradictory between the goal and marketing this to private investors is that GDP growth and an increase in the size of economy is directly linked to technological innovation and advancements in as has been shown several times throughout history. So by laying low and suppressing GDP growth, then you end up disenfranchising these small and medium-sized enterprises that want to innovate, to create sustainable solutions, to reduce the CO2 emissions and other climate hurting processes by suppressing their reason to grow, their reason to become larger, which innovation will be a massive part of, which all gets suppressed by this goal's focus on suppressing GDP growth and suppressing economic development.
Okay, thank you very much for this further point still in clause number 2 and about innovation. And so for the very final point of this General Assembly, of this debate on Econ 1, we're going to go to Pesh. You're recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me. I would just like to draw attention to policy proposal number 8, where it requests member states to commit to specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time-bound long-term sustainability goals. I would ask, is this not already the SDGs? Do we not already have that in the form of the Sustainable Development Goals? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this short point. So we will now go back to the proposing committee. No, okay, just in time. Let me check. You already had you already used up your direct response, Reggie. So we can't recognize you for this. So we'll go back to the proposing committee to specifically answer questions on your measures related to SMEs, how we'll support innovation, and also about clarifying whether the goals you're proposing in clause number 8, how they relate to the Sustainable Development Goals. So Econ 1, you're recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. First to the question from Libe about OC number 2. We want to support SMEs because they are the innovators. We want to invest in them. And as we know, big companies don't do innovation. So that's why we want to support SMEs, and they are profitable. To invest in to be sustainable is profitable. And to the question from Code about 2C, we are not suppressing GDP. That's not our idea. We're just saying that GDP, we shouldn't be taking it so seriously. We should use some other measurements or how our on the well-being of people. We are not suppressing GDP. So that point was absolutely wrong in that sense. And about SDG number 8, we are trying to emphasize the measurements and make sure that they're implied and that countries are held accountable so that they actually do them. And we are emphasizing the SDGs, so we're like supporting them. And yeah, I think that's all. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So this rounds up open debate for this resolution. So now the proposing committee has 5 minutes to go in their separate room to discuss whether they would like to make an amendment. So if Beniamino, if you'd like to share some amendment music while we wait. And again, as always, we encourage you to read through the resolution again, think about the debate, and start thinking about how you'd like to vote. Okay, thank you, Benjamina. So I believe the proposing committee is now returning with an amendment. So we're very excited to have this opportunity for the debate to be constructive, and so for the proposing committee to be able to consider all of your points, which is what happened with Econ 1. So we'll ask the chair of Econ 1 to post the amendment in the chat, and the proposing committee will now be able to deliver their summation speech, in which they will also speak about the amendment that was made. So Econ 1, whenever you're ready, you're recognized to deliver your summation speech.
Thank you for the floor. Dear delegates, honorable members of the board, distinguished guests and organizers, let me express my deepest gratitude to address this beautiful assembly. At this exact time, at this session, in this period of history, we are called to reaffirm our values and our commitments, to hold them against a hard reality, to the redemption of the exploitation we have caused in search of quick profit, and to the promise of future generations to come. A promise of a sustainable future in which one is not left behind, starving in the streets without a helping hand. Of a future where we are able to realize our potential, no matter where we come from, no matter our identity, no matter our culture. In varietate concordia, united in diversity. Dear citizens of the European Union and our friends, we are all united in the endurance of the hardships to come. But if there's one thing from this session that will stick with me forever, it is the power of the individual. Together, as European citizens, we must strengthen our resolve individually and communally and be the exemplars of sustainability. Because the future lies in the hands of us all, in our behaviors, in our choices, in our solidarity. We sense deep in our bones that with a slight change in priorities, we can make sure that the coming generations, that every child in Europe and across the globe has a decent shot at life, and that the doors of opportunity remain open to all. We know we can do better, and we want that choice. With this resolution, we offer that choice. Our committee has worked on this resolution to help those in need, such as our amendment, which is stating that we want to help the poor countries. And we are all in big trouble. We are all in need. A house built on poor foundations might be built larger and larger and larger, but eventually it will not be able to sustain itself and will collapse on its own weight. Let us build proper foundations. Let us build foundations that will last and provide us with the certainty that the generations to come may survive and prosper. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this passionate summation speech. We are now going to kick off the poll. So first on the aim of the resolution. So please take a minute to think about the whole debate. Think about the summation speech from the delegates of Econ 1 and cast your vote. The poll will be open for 1 minute. You have 30 seconds left to cast your vote on the aim of the resolution. Ten seconds. It's your last chance to cast your vote. And the vote is closing. And with 48 votes in favor, 16 votes against, and 2 abstentions, the aim of the resolution has passed. So we're now going to kick off the vote on the policy proposals. So while it loads, think about the policy proposals. Okay, so we're dismissing the last 15 people. Please cast your vote on the policy proposals. Okay, we're still missing 6 people. It's your last chance before the vote is closed to vote on the policy proposals. And closing. So the results are in. And it is my great pleasure to announce that with 38 votes in favor, 21 votes against, and 1 abstention, the resolution from the committee Econ 1 has passed. So please unmute your microphones. Congratulations. This was a very passionate debate. We did our best on the board, but it was quite intense. So it's very great to see how you're also involved and also passionate about these issues. This was definitely a very overarching debate that touched upon a lot of different issues. And soon we will have the very last debate of the day from the Committee on Regional Development. So what we're going to do now, and again, apologies for the mix-up in the program and the resolution booklet, it's going to be edited. The program for tomorrow is correct. The times are correct. What we're going to do now is we're going to call, we had our first selected energizer that's going to come from Filippo Cretti. Are you here, Filippo?
Hi, yes, here I am.
So, yes, we can hear you very well. So Filippo has proposed to lead a 10-minute meditation, which I think is the perfect time of day and is going to give us just the right amount of headspace to focus on the last debate. After Filippo's meditation, we're going to take a 10-minute break and then we'll start the last debate of the day at 5 p.m. sharp. So Filippo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, first of all, I would like to ask everyone to try to find a comfortable position. So it could be if you want to lay down, if you want to Just sit in your chair if you want to. Anything you prefer. You just need to be comfortable. Maybe try to not fall asleep. Thank you very much. Now I will ask you to close your eyes whenever you're ready. After you have closed your eyes, please try to concentrate on your breath. So inspire and expire. Inspire and exhale. Exhale. Inspire and exhale. And keep on with this practice. So inspire and expire. Very deep breaths. I also want you to try, and this may be difficult at first, don't worry about that, to not stick. I want you to not stick to a thought, to just let your thought flow. It's just like as if you were on the edge of a road and you looked at the cars passing by, but you're not fixing your eyes on one. So you're not fixing your mind on one thought. You're just letting them flow by. And you're breathing. So you're inspiring and exhaling. Inspiring and exhaling. Now, I want you to think, to visualize a light in front of you. It's a big light. It has whatever the form came into your mind at first, and it's in front of you. And you can feel it is warm. You can feel it. You just need to fix your mind on this light. Just feel the warmth coming towards you. Now the light is starting to flow from your feet. So you feel your feet so you feel that your feet are warming up. And as they warm up, you receive a very nice sensation. They are loosening up. Your feet now are completely warm and relaxed. And the light moves up to your ankles. And your ankles, and after your ankles, you start climbing up to your legs, up to the knees. And as the light flows within you, you feel that where it passes, it hits up your body. You feel warmth in the feet, in the ankles, and up to the knee. You feel warmth, and you feel the muscles which are relaxing. The light keeps on and gets up to the limbs. So now all of your legs are warm, relaxed. The muscles are loosened up. Just stick to the sensation, stick to the light, keeping on going up to your body, expanding in your abdomen. The muscles relaxing. Now you can feel the light, the warmth, which expands in your chest. Breathing is easier now because your solar plexus is completely relaxed. You don't have any tension whatsoever. So your feet, your legs, your limbs, a good part of your body now is warm and relaxed. You need to stick to these sensations. Do not think of everything else, anything else. Stick just to this sensation of warmth, of relaxation. Now you can feel the light getting to your shoulders, the muscles of your shoulders relaxing. This is really needed after a long day in front of the PC. So you have all your muscles, or the muscles of your body relaxed, warm. Now that all of your body is relaxed, the light is climbing up your neck. So you feel your neck, your throat, which are getting relaxed. They're getting this nice sensation that you get when you crack your fingers, for example. It's all within you. After your neck, it arrives at your head, your jawline, firstly. You feel your jawline loosening up. Maybe you had it tightened because of the stress. Now it's loosened up, as is all of your body, which is warm and relaxed. No tension whatsoever in all of your muscles, your back too, your spine. After getting to the jaw, it relaxes also the cheek muscles, this light, this big light. It gets the cheek muscles to the forehead and the whole of your scalp. Now you are completely soaked by this warm, relaxing light. Stick to this sensation. Stick only to this physical sensation. You can feel it. I know that. There is just this now. No thoughts, no bad emotions, nothing else. You're filled by light, and together with light, you're filled with peace. Very good. You can stay in this mood as long as you want. When you want to start, you can begin to opening up your eyes, slowly coming back to the reality, feeling better, more relaxed. Maybe stand up, stretch a bit, only if you feel like it.
Thank you so much, Filippo. It was really, really lovely. So thank you for sharing this light and warmth and relaxation with us and taking such good care of us as you have for the whole session. So as promised, we now have a break and we'll be back here to begin at 5 p.m. sharp for the last debate of the day.
Thank you. I would like to remind everybody that in 2 minutes, the General Assembly will continue. Please start making your way back in and also make sure that your delegates and or fellow delegates make their way back. I see that there are already 87 people back in this meeting. Thank you very much for all of you for respecting the time limits. However, it is not yet everybody, so chairpersons, please rush your delegates, tell them that the break is over and that we are starting in 30 seconds. While we wait for the last couple of delegates to come back, can I get a raised hand from Reggie, the proposing committee, if they are complete? I see, no, never mind, that was not a raised hand. Once again, Reggie, if you are complete, please raise your hand. I see the chair of Reggie looking at the screen very intensely, but not raising a hand, so I suppose that means we are still missing 1 or 2 delegates.
Just that since Reggie is almost last alphabetically, whenever someone joins the call, the list shifts, and so it's really hard to count my delegates. But I think I'm missing just one. I'll message them immediately so we can start soon.
Thank you very much. In the meantime, perhaps I can ask our lovely organizer team to already move the slide to the topic so that we can get started with that swimmingly. Oh no, wait, wrong debate. I gotta stop now. All right, ready or not, Reggie, we're going to assume that you are all here. And that assumption is mainly on the need to move on. So I really hope that everybody is indeed here. And with that said, we will now continue with the motion for a resolution made by the Committee on Regional Development, REGI. And the topic reads as follows: an inclusive transition. With the European Green Deal setting the ambitious target of carbon neutrality by 2050, how should the transition to green energy be supported in regions where fuels currently play an important economic and social role? And as always, the amazing media team has prepared a context piece to put the topic into its proper context.
Achieving carbon neutrality by 2050, that seemed like a dream back in 2020. By 2030, the best we had achieved was to push thousands of people into poverty. Employees of the coal industry left penniless on the street. Some inclusive transition that was. But now, after all the struggles, everything seems to be in place. We still have 5 more years to achieve the goal. Let's make this happen.
Our aim is to make the energy transition as inclusive as possible by listening to companies and employees in certain regions to ensure that they have a safe and smooth transition, basically.
Our resolution aims to involve the local communities and the workers in the just transition mechanism, to preserve the cultural heritage and the vitality of these areas, and to prevent the regional population as the mines shut down and as the coal stops being burned. Our main focus has been finding the areas in which the communities could have been affected more and trying to work on that. For example, we have encountered a lot of issues regarding the reskilling of mining workers, as it is considered that the skills of miners are quite incompatible with the requirement of other modern industries. And also we had to discuss a lot about alternative energies, as these regions heavily rely on fossil fuels and cannot risk facing any energetic shortages.
The committee work was really interesting, actually, because we came up with a lot of new ideas and we did research and we had little debates to discuss certain topics that were relevant to our aim. With a lot of hard work and dedication, we eventually came to the resolutions we have now.
A key issue of the problem has been deciding what to do with the existing structures and infrastructures that are linked to the fossil fuel industry. As we progressed in our discussions, we realized that the conversion of such structures and infrastructures in order to meet the needs of the alternative energy industries is both feasible, convenient, and despicable.
There's a lot of controversy about certain alternative energy forms like nuclear energy, and that was a topic that was hard to tackle because everyone had their own opinions about it.
Nuclear energy is a very special topic and hard to discuss, so we thought that probably it would have needed a whole resolution by itself.
I know it has been said before, but I will say just once more, thank you so much to the media team for all the amazing output that you have provided us with throughout this session. As I see the applause and heart emojis pop up left, right, and center, I will now move to the proposing committee. Are the delegates, or is a delegate, I suppose, of REGI ready to deliver a proposition speech on the political position or the resolution aim? Reggie, you're recognized.
Dear Vice President, organizers, chairpersons, and fellow delegates, thank you for giving me an opportunity by presenting this proposition speech. I am Nicole, and I'm here to introduce you to my community of regional development. Throughout the last few days, we have dealt with a very important problem, taking part not of all our lives at this moment, but also our futures and next generations. Not many people nor children and our peers are aware of how important this problem is. That is why I'm thrilled to introduce you into our topic. We have been dealing with how can the transition to green energy be assisted in regions where fossil fuels currently play an important economic and social position, given the European Green Deal's ambitious goal of carbon neutrality by 2050. It is well known that extraction processes from companies using fossil fuels to provide our energy can generate air and water pollution and harm local communities. When the fuels are burned, they emit toxin and global warming emissions. This has an impact on all of our lives, whether we are noticing it or we aren't. Miners working in coal companies are at risk of developing either two serious lung diseases, pneumoconiosis, also called black lung disease, from coal dust, or silicosis from rock dust. And what about us, normal citizens who don't work in mines? I bet that you know somebody who has diseases which could be caused by fossil fuel companies, such as asthma, pneumonia, bronchitis, heart diseases, cancer, and etc. But let's not be selfish, because this doesn't only impact humans, but it impacts nature as well. The extradition and burning of fossil fuels causes environmental degradation. We are also aware of the European Green Deal aims to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, meaning fossil fuels will have to be replaced with an alternative energy sources, but fossil fuels companies lack financial incentives to contribute to energy transition. We truly believe that our resolutions can solve these problems and help every member state of the European Union. We have not only focused generally on the EU, but made a plan which could be profitable for every member of the European Union. Our plans stand for owners of the fossil fuel companies, but also employees, people living around them, and all citizens. We aspire to amend the brace energy production and intensive fossil fuel companies to transition. This further makes an effort to protect employees of industries companies from unemployment, to secure the solidity and growth of affected communities whose economies and traditions are largely reliant on fossil fuels. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reggie, for an articulate, thorough, and well-timed proposition speech. We will now open the floor to two opposition speeches by any other committee. I say other committee, technically Reggie, if they want, they could deliver an opposition speech, but I don't think that is exactly what we want. Seeing how Reggie does not have its hand raised, I will look to the other committees, and my eye rests on Econ 2, who will be recognized for the first opposition speech. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you for the recognition. I would like to begin by commending Reggie for a well-rounded resolution. However, it's not without its shortcomings. In your aim statement and because clauses, you claim that we should incentivize fossil fuel companies to take part in the transition, that fossil fuel companies lack the financial incentive. However, I'd like to pose a question to you. How is it that these industries lack financial incentives when, according to the International Monetary Fund, they make almost $10 million a minute from current subsidies, alongside their current profits that they make from continuous pollution of our environment? The very subsidies that support an industry that drives negative public health impacts and climate change impacts. Furthermore, in return, we have only seen a constant rise in the threat of climate change. So it's very, very clear. Simply throwing money at these companies is not an effective response, which your committee has failed to recognize. To echo the words of the UN Secretary General, you are simply using taxpayers' money to destroy the world. Instead, you should have focused on halting investment in fossil fuels completely. Yes, that poses a risk, but it's a risk we have to take, and it's a risk you have failed to take. And so I can only urge my fellow delegates to vote against this statement, as it tackles the problem rather passively and does not encompass what we need to do today to stop fossil fuel emissions and to start holding these companies accountable in order to reshape a sustainable tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Econ 2, for this very respectful yet to the point speech talking about how we need more than money to tackle this approach and how just throwing money at the problem does not constitute a solution. Now we move to a second committee for any second opposition speeches. And there I see the committee on ITRE. You're recognized for the second speech. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you for recognition. My name is Julia and I am from ITRE committee. Firstly, I would like to congratulate Regi committee on the resolution. However, I do not fully agree with their political position. In my opinion, we should not incentivize fossil fuel companies because we have no control over what they decide to do with the money they receive. And instead of enhancing green transition, we could only make situation worse. What's more, many member states subsidize fossil fuel companies and not for noble reasons at all. Therefore, it would be impossible to combine incentives for both supporting and dismantling the fossil fuels industry. I just don't see how this could work. From my point of view, it would be best if we actually stopped supporting fossil fuel companies at all. Not only do they cause environmental degradation, but also contribute to climate change. And this is an important fact to remember. What's more, you mentioned the fact that transition may have a negative impact on communities because people can lose their jobs. However, you fail to recognize that alternative energy industry also has a huge economic potential to compensate any losses caused by the transformation. Therefore, I would encourage you to rethink your political position. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ITRE, for a very succinct opposition speech. I think that, of course, it is very fitting that the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy would have something to say about the inclusive transition and its effects on regions that rely heavily on fossil fuels. With that, we are ready to move back to the proposing committee for a 1-minute response to these 2 opposition speeches. Do we have a member of the proposing committee willing to deliver a 1-minute response? Regi, you are recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, 1 second.
It seems that technical issues can also include dogs in the background. These are among the lesser known side effects of international sessions being held online. However, nothing that can stop us, no pandemic, no dogs. Regi, you are still recognized.
Thank you. So in response to Econ 2, the committee saying that, that fossil fuel companies lack financial incentives, we mean that the fossil fuels lack financial incentive to transform into using green energy. They don't lack financial incentive in the means of producing energy. They just simply lack it in the means to transform, because the transformation from non-renewable to renewable energy would be really expensive because they already have all the existing facilities, and to turn these into facilities for renewable energy would be really expensive. Second of all, in response to the point that we should not incentivize companies because we don't know what they will do with the money. We mean to incentivize them specifically for this point, and we're supporting carbon neutrality by pushing carbon dioxide carbon taxes. It's important that we realize that we are hoping that companies hire to transform themselves, and subsidies to make transition attractive for them, to lower the costs of the transition for them. Econ 2 also suggested that we should cut off fossil fuel firms completely. Now, we should not do this because hundreds of lives, thousands of lives depend on the fossil fuel industry, and cutting them off completely.
Please conclude in 5 seconds.
Oh yes, so this will significantly damage people's lives. People will lose their jobs if they be cut off completely, and many firms receive subsidies, and this, so they will receive subsidies to turn into renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There will be plenty of time for your committee to respond to all the points made from here on out. However, with that, I happily open the first round of open debate, starting with a point from the Committee on Fisheries. Pesh, you are recognized.
Hello, thank you for the word. My name is Isaac, I'm from Pesh. I see in your aim statement, but most importantly in your ICs, that you have failed to mention any possible solution to how to make sure that the air and airplane travel has or should be transitioned. And as the great Mr. Fabio Cancare said on the sustainability fair, he's from Boston Consulting Group. The travel, and especially airplane travel, is the main polluter and the thing that's hindering the European Green New Deal. And I just can't see how you have missed having travel and travel alternatives mentioned in your ICs. Thank you.
We have received a point of order from Reggie. However, we would like to point of order your point of order. We will first have an open debate on the resolution aim and the political positions before we move on to the policy proposals. Thank you. And
Yes.
with that, we will now, sorry, thank you very much, Pesh, also for your contribution to the first round of open debate. And with that, we will move on to NV2.
Thank you for recognition again. Okay, my question is the following. Since we all know how much income do the fossil fuel companies get and have, I believe that it is definitely not easy to replace them with alternatives. The reason behind it is that if the companies really cared about the environment, the ongoing disaster situation, and even people and population, they would have already taken place to change the situation even a little bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we do. We will now take a point from Sede before rounding off the first round of open debate with a point from Tilt. Sede, you are recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. I would like to comment that I believe your aim statement is a little bit self-contradictory, because on the one hand, you say that you would like fossil fuel companies to take part in the transition to other forms of energy. However, you haven't really taken into account how much profit these corporations make. So maybe it won't be so much into their interest to switch into a different type of energy since they make so much money from fossil fuels. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution, Sede, pointing out a contradiction in the policy aim. As promised, we will round off the first round of open debate with a point from the Committee on Culture and Education. Kult, you are recognized.
Okay, thank you for the recognition. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine, thank you.
Thank you. I had a question concerning one of the because phrases about minors not fulfilling requirements for professions in other fields and industries. I would really ask for clarification of this point, because I don't see what the committee is pointing at the problem being. Is the problem the unwillingness of minors to requalify? Is it the impossibility to do so? Is it really that specific? Is it really impossible? And how? I don't see how you would tackle the response to that, as I do not see what problem you're trying to point at. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kult. So, Reggie, I believe you have quite a daunting task. You have to respond to disagreements, contradictions, and questions for qualifications. Very nice alliteration. Reggie, are you ready to respond?
Yeah.
Can the chair of Reggie please raise their placard, raise their hand? Reggie recognized.
Okay, thank you for the recognition. Since there were several points made and some of them were about the same issue, I will not be responding to them one by one, but giving a general speech, answering all of your points. So many of the delegates have said something about the incentives and fossil fuel industries, and so I would like to first reply to that. During our researches, we found out that currently there are no effective incentives given to fossil fuel companies to adapt to transition to green energy. So that's why we wanted to focus on incentives
I realized that most delegates have failed to understand that incentives are not just going to be money that will be blindly distributed to fossil fuel companies, but it will be a chance for fossil fuel companies to change their stance on the issue and not heavily lose money because of this change. We're giving them a chance to be better. The reason why we need their participation in the transition is that it's easier to directly turn the bad into something good than to exterminate the bad and then create something good out of scratch, which would just make the transition process take longer, and the world doesn't have much time left regarding the climate crisis. So we thought that this solution would be more reasonable. And also there was a point made out about the skills of the mining workers. So what we meant in that clause—
Please conclude your point.
Oh, okay. What we meant in that clause is that miners often don't acquire the skills to work in other industries. For example, maybe in constructing industries, those skills would be more appropriate, but in other industries than constructive industries, the skills that you would need would be quite different. So that was what we meant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Selin, representing Reggie, responding to the points raised in the open debate. We will now continue with the policy proposals, and in perfect accordance with the order of the General Assembly, we will start it with an introduction to the operative section by the proposing committee of 2 minutes. Reggie, are you ready? Reggie ready, Reggie recognized. Yet another alliteration.
Thanks for the floor. Dear all, in the operative section of our resolution, we mentioned actions that will help and ensure the transition to have minimal negative effects, especially in the regions where fossil fuels play an important role. In detail, our policy proposals, which you can find in our motion for resolution, are to make sure that besides financial support for the citizens affected from the transition, the environment will restore to cause minimal negative effects. To ensure that the transition to clean energy will be realistic, and as a result, we can have financially viable and efficient energy infrastructures. To prevent the population in affected regions, take account the voice of affected citizens while making changes that can have an impact on them. For taking care of the requirements of citizens based on the social, economic, environmental, cultural roles played by mining in fossil fuel dependent regions. To ensure that affected workers can have the required skills and knowledge for working in other fields. As a result of the research we had, we came up with solutions that are based on scientific studies by trustworthy sources. Based on that, we included a policy proposal which advises member states to transform coal mining infrastructure into alternative regional sources of income, such as tourist attractions, healthcare centers, or sources of geothermal energy. We also suggest the member states set up campaigns to raise awareness about the importance and benefits of a green transition. We believe that the policy proposals we came up with are the key to sustainable regional development during this transition. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Back to me indeed. We will start the second round of open debate with a point from Econ 3, which will be followed by Libe. Econ 3, you are recognized.
Thank you for the recognition. Firstly, I want to say thank you for the committee for your conclusive proposal. I do have one serious concern, though, that I would like you to address. In your last policy proposal, you want to implement a common carbon tax. You have acknowledged the fact that some communities in Europe are very dependent on fossil fuels, and often they are the poorer countries. How will an universal carbon tax help your cause and help these communities? Currently, this can only be seen as a tax on the poor, because they are the ones who will have a hard time transitioning to a more environmentally friendly alternative. Thank you.
It appears that we have a direct response from the Committee on Security and Defense. Sede, are you sure that this point refers to the common carbon tax and how this affects the poorer countries or regions?
Yeah, I would. Thanks for recognizing me. I would just like to point out that in terms of implementing a common carbon tax and its effect on the poor regions, it is not a EU competency to implement a carbon tax on individual member states. The closest you can do is perhaps implement a tax on imports, a carbon tax on imports, which the EU can do as an economic union. But I would also advise the committee that the European Parliament voted on this last month. So unless you wanted to expand on that, I think it's important to note where our competencies lie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sede. I will allow that one because it was about the carbon tax. However, the point from Econ 3 was on its effect on poorer countries and regions. So please try to keep your direct responses as targeted as possible. Speaking of, we have a direct response from Econ 1. As you have just been able to tell, I'm very strict with whether they do apply or not. So Econ 1, are you sure that it applies to the proposal made by the delegate from Sede?
We no longer have a direct response.
You no longer have a direct response. Very wise decision. In that case, we also have a direct response from Gold. Now, I don't want to discourage you guys and scare you away from making the direct responses, but Gold, does your point relate to the last point made in the open debate?
I think so, because it is to avoid misunderstanding once again, as maybe my brain is just too confused now. But
in that case, Gold, you are recognized.
Okay, thank you. A common carbon tax. I'm struggling to grasp what exactly do you imply? Common for each region, common for the EU, and that is also related to, yeah, how on what scale would you like to implement it? Because if it's common for each region, as the fellow delegate said, well, it would, yeah, or if it's common for each EU member state, then inequalities will prevail.
Very well, thank you very much. After that, we can now, seeing how no other direct responses are coming in, continue with the open debate with a point from Libe. Libe, you are recognized.
Thank you. So I have a point about the 8th clause. So your policy proposals have little to no recognition of mine-dependent countries' economy in the term before possible transition to green energy sources. However, please explain how tourist attractions and health institutions will substitute the significant primary income of mining industry in the coal-dependent countries. Furthermore, do you consider coal-dependent countries, which happen to be mostly developing countries, major tourist attractions? And do you assume that healthcare is a source of income, not a primary citizen right? Thank you.
Thank you very much to Libe for drawing critical attention to the point of tourism and healthcare. We will now move on with a point from Econ 2. Econ 2, you are recognized.
Yes, hello. I wanted to raise awareness regarding the reduced carbon emissions as stated earlier. It is said that carbon emissions ought to be reduced, but the question for me then arises, okay, how are we supposed to gain the electricity of the power plants that we shut down? For we need certain amounts of electricity to not only keep ourselves going but also keep our electricity grid going. So I would ask on how this is supposed to be supplied, and if we ought to shut down coal reactors, are we supposed to build new nuclear reactors instead, or how is it going to go instead? Because we need electricity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do indeed need our energy, and so thank you for asking where that will come from, if not from fossil fuels. Last round, last point for this round of open debate will come from, let's take a second point from Pesh. Why not? Pesh, you are recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me. Firstly, I'd like to commend the committee on their great work with a very difficult and challenging topic. I'd also like to ask the committee, your policy proposals focus mainly on the businesses and the transitions of companies, and I can't see much regarding the general population also transitioning. I'd ask, do you have any aims or what would you aim to do to actually convince the general population to also switch? Because for some countries, like for example, for some solutions like solar panels, they are very costly and poorer income families may not be able to afford these in comparison to be able to afford coal for their fire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am hearing insightful comments from every corner of the debate. I would just quickly like to remind the entire General Assembly that this is a debate on the impact of the energy transition on regions that are heavily reliant on fossil fuels. This debate is not on the energy transition in and of itself. Please cater your points to this fact. Then we have a direct response from Libe, keeping in mind what I just mentioned, that we do not want to go down the rabbit hole of discussing the energy transition itself. Is the point that is raised by Libe still relevant?
I think so, yeah. I'd just like to make that the common carbon tax would further increase the cost.
Hold on, sorry, 1 second. Which committee are you from?
Oh, sorry, MV2.
Yes, Libe was the one who was recognized. You may be after Libe. That is completely fine. These things happen. However, my question to Libe still stands. Is the direct response directly responding to the last point while at the same time keeping it on the impact of the energy transition on regions that are heavily reliant on fossil fuel?
Nope, Libe no longer wants it.
In that case, thank you very much for that honest answer, Ines, representing Libe in Realto's absence. With that, I will now go to Becca, representing Enrico, and representing Andy in Enrico's absence. Words. Your direct response, you already answered, is still relevant. So, NB2, you are recognized.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, so to kind of bolster that point, the common carbon tax that you recommend would further increase the price of fuels for regions that rely on it.
Thank you very much for tying this entire discussion back together, making it about regions in the end, just before we go back to the proposing committee. With that, Reggie, we had a lot of points, a lot of back and forth, and we have one more direct response from Cult, which I will not take because I have already started going to Reggie, and I think that this round of open debate has been complicated and confusing enough as it stands already. So, to summarize, we were talking about the common carbon tax and how this disproportionately affects poorer countries and poorer regions. We have been talking about tourism and health, and the question of whether this in and of itself can replace the income from fossil fuel. And then we have been talking very briefly about emissions reduced at the cost of fossil fuel, but how we still need our energy. If you can address that from a regional perspective, then you may do so as well. Reggie, are you ready to respond? I see a raised hand. That means that you are recognized.
Thank you for the floor. Okay, this is going to be hard because there's a lot of stuff. Okay, first thing first, the carbon tax. Yeah, the European Union can do that. Also, there are already some taxation schemes. They do not work that well, and there are many civil groups from the civil society which are pushing the European Union to adopt a carbon tax. And as we understand that it would give a burden to some countries. Also, these countries benefit from the just transition mechanism, which provide them a lot of money and is intended exactly for tackling this issue. And the just transition mechanism is the cornerstone of our resolution. Okay, and the carbon tax is the like earlier other delegates criticized our resolution because they thought that we would be like shoveling money into fossil fuel companies. Our incentives are mostly negative incentives, so a carbon tax. Okay, and then regarding the conversion and the energy sources, in our resolution, there are several points addressing alternative energy sources. We recognize that this is a very, very big problem, but actually it is technically feasible to convert coal power plants into alternative energy sources in plants that can provide energy from alternative energy sources. And we want to allocate some funds to that through the justification mechanism.
You have a couple of seconds to conclude, please.
Okay. Regarding someone who, someone that said that we have a lot of points for companies, actually, we focus also on schooling for people, involving the communities, involving the workers. But clearly, companies here play a very, very important role since we're addressing economic and social topics mostly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Very nicely rounded off. Before we open the third round of open debate, I just very quickly want to echo some praise that the officials have been sharing over the course of the past minutes, because the entire day, as you may have noticed, every time anybody speaks, apparently, except for me right now, they are spotlighted. And I just want to draw attention to the amazing Gaia Palma, who, thank you so much, it means a lot to me, who behind the scenes has been spotlighting everyone that speaks during the speeches, during the rounds of open debate. So if she can spotlight herself, maybe for just a moment, so we can all give her the round of applause that she so definitely deserves. Thank you very much, Gaia. You are doing amazing, and we all appreciate your work behind the scenes. And this, of course, goes to the entire organizing team who are working tirelessly to make this run incredibly smoothly for us. Now, with that, I would like to open the third round of open debate with a point from ITRE, after which we will move to Econ 1. ITRE, you are recognized.
Thank you so much for recognition. First of all, I'd like to say that I sincerely love how you think about people in the industry who didn't have much of the choices. But the goal in your aim and in general of your topic is to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. And many of your proposals are kind of long-term decisions. Are you sure that it's possible to completely rebuild educational system, cultural system, and just in general mindset by this time? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I am afraid that at this point, I do have to step in and remind the General Assembly that, once again, the debate at hand is not about the energy transition. The debate at hand is about the energy transition's impact on regions that rely heavily on fossil fuels. So with that said, I want to move forward, Econ 1, and after that, Econ 3.
Thank you. Thank you so much for recognizing me. I have a question about policy proposal number 10. And while I'm talking, I want you to take into consideration the countries of the Western Balkans in which coal workers and miners are often the sole breadwinners of their families. How are you going to support them financially during this period of reskilling and while they are searching for a new job? As you probably might know, these periods of searching for a new job can be very, very long, especially in developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ariel, for that very important contribution to this debate. And after a point from Econ 1, we will move on to its sister committee of Econ 3. Econ 3, you are recognized.
So I would like to congratulate, first of all, Reggie on their efforts and further contribute to their aim. With the proposal of adding in clause 11, besides carbon tax, I would suggest also implementing the EU emission trading system in buildings as well as transport sectors with the view to have climate neutral transport by 2035, or even raising the carbon price, which would evidently force a reduction in carbon consumption in those regions.
Thank you very much. And as if we didn't have enough monetary input here already, let's just get a point from No, I see that things are being shaken up right under my feet. Sorry, Econ 2, you were going to be recognized, but instead it will be NV1. Jacob and Ricarda can fight it out among themselves. NV1, you're recognized.
Thank you very much for the recognition, and I've appreciated most of your resolution. However, I was a bit disappointed by not funding proper measures to actually empower citizens to contribute to the energy transition as consumers beyond the education. And talking about education, I wanted to ask if the cultural activities mentioned in point 9 are going to be somehow related to energy consumption and sustainability, as it is not clarified.
Thank you very much, Lara. And before we move back to the proposing committee to respond to the points of the open debate, I would also like to thank every single one of you for keeping the tone of the debate so constructive and respectful. It is very rare for a General Assembly of this many people to remain this kind to each other, and even more so for the debate to move so fluently at the same time. So I would like to ask everybody for a quick round of silent applause for every member of this General Assembly as we move back to the proposing committee to respond to the points raised during the open debate. With that, Reggie, are you ready to respond to the points made during the open debate? Reggie, you are recognized.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for their points. They're extremely constructive. They're very kind and respectful, and I'd just like to thank everyone. And just to get on to a couple of the points, Itru made the first comment about carbon neutrality. I think Thanos already said it, that it's not relevant to our topic, unfortunately. Of course, we'd love to address it, but it's not part of our topic. Then to Econ 1, who said, how do we support families and communities who are the main breadwinners of the community? I completely understand. I completely get that. And that's where the just transition mechanism comes into. It's about 160 billion euros contributed to just supporting these families and helping them transition. In section 5 and section 9, we also discuss how we can create cultural activities to keep that community strong and united. And in section 5, we also discuss funds for infrastructure and education in order for those people to be able to obtain jobs if they do lose them. So while we're supporting them, we're also helping them become re-employed. And then I think it was Econ 3 said, we will consider your point. Like it's a valid point. It might be a bit off topic from ours. We'll certainly talk about it at the amendments. And then the last point about not finding proper measures to incentivize citizens to contribute to the change. We think we have. We've section 3. We say to suggest the member states set up campaigns to raise awareness. I think that's all you can really do. I mean, we don't want to infringe on individuals and their liberty and their ability. So we think that a best way is to raise awareness and to really clamp down on the corporations that are threatening these communities from descending